recording first. Hi and welcome everybody. I'm Robin with Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. I want to thank you all so much for being here today. We've got some great presenters. I'm really excited for you all to hear their presentations. I just really quickly want to go over some general housekeeping information before we get started. I am recording this webinar, so if there's information you want to review again, you definitely will be able to do that. Or if there's other members of your team who you'd like to take a look at the information, they can definitely access that recording also. It may be early next week, but we'll get out the information regarding the recording link once that's all ready and set up. I also like to mention that your phone lines are muted. That's only to help with any distraction from background noise, and we get so many people on the phone at the same time. But if you have any questions or you're having technical issues, please feel free to use the attendee chat over on the left-hand side of your screen. I'll be happy to help you out there if you're having technical issues. We will probably hold most of the questions until the end of the webinar, but when you've got a question, please feel free to type it into the chat so you don't forget about it, and we will make sure to pass those questions along to the presenters at the end of the presentation. It is now my pleasure to go ahead and introduce Jackie Bennett with Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, who will get us started. Jackie?
Thanks, Robin, and good morning or afternoon to everyone, wherever you may be. Welcome to our second GFAS and PASA webinar. We're really thrilled, especially in a year as challenging as this one, to join with PASA to bring sanctuaries and rescue centers together, to share some experiences and ideas and learn from each other. And today we're going to hear from centers on 3 different continents on the topic of peer-to-peer fundraising and ambassador programs. Basically, how can you encourage your volunteers and other supporters to share information about your mission and help you raise funds? Before I introduce our panel, I'm just going to turn it over briefly to Caitlin Buck with PASA to say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Around this time of year, all the PASA members are usually together at our annual conference. Obviously, that's not possible this year, but I'm really thrilled that we have the webinars as another way to connect and share resources during this time. This also gives us the opportunity to join with the larger GFAS community, which is really exciting. So thank you, everyone, for being a part of this.
Thanks, Caitlin. And next, we'll go to our panel. So as I mentioned, we have 3 organizations on 3 continents, first being Dave Totoy of the Vervet Monkey Foundation in South Africa. After we hear from Dave, we're going to go to the UK, where Rachel Havesi and Sarah Hansen of Wild Futures will be talking about their experiences at their monkey sanctuary. And then we will be coming back to the US to hear from Todd Montgomery of the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee, who's going to share information about their ambassador program. And we're also going to hear a bit from the volunteers' perspective as Lori Duvall Jackson, one of the Elephant Sanctuary's ambassadors, will share her experiences. We're grateful to all of them for taking the time to speak with us and to answer your questions. And as Robin said, we'll take questions at the end. And if there's any other time left, we'll also have a little bit further discussion with our presenters. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave first to tell us more about Vervet Monkey Foundation.
Thank you, everybody, for that. As you heard, I'm Dave from the Vervet Monkey Foundation in South Africa. I'm just going to see if my screen is going to be able to share. So I can put mine up and see if it comes over. There we go. I hope you can see my screen, if that's come through all right.
I can see it, Dave.
Super. If you do hear loud banging in the background, that's just some of the monkeys, the wild monkeys around the area jumping on the roof. So please don't be too concerned. All right, one of the main things with any one of our organizations is basically to try and work out how to raise funds. And it's not an easy task. So it does help to get other people involved. And as we have a resource of volunteers, it certainly makes sense to try utilize their skills into being able to do this. So the foundation does use a lot of their volunteers. We normally try and have a meeting with new volunteers as we get a new bunch of volunteers coming in every time. We try and get them involved all together to come and discuss things, discuss different ideas, new ideas, brainstorm on certain ways of fundraising, and then try and incorporate those ideas to try and raise funds while they're actually at the foundation. So we do find this is a very important aspect, and the volunteers can be a very good source of basically raising funds for your organization. It does have limits as well, because you do have to still supervise everything that's going on. We do find it is a lot better if we've actually got the volunteers here at the time to sort of raise funds, because then there's a lot of outside interest with their family and their other friends, basically to also participate and contribute. So that is a very, very important thing. We have had many ideas sort of coming in from sponsorships and the normal things that people basically do. However, I have found that where you have one of the founders or one of the directors involved in the fundraising or as part of the fundraising, you seem to be able to raise a lot more funds in this way. One of these photos is when I unfortunately or fortunately turned 50, and we managed to raise 50,000 Rand. I didn't know about the thing. They banned me on Messenger, Facebook, so I couldn't see what was happening. And I think this also added to the enthusiasm. And that helped to raise a lot more money. So I think our involvement can also play a big thing. Of course, products and stuff that you really need play an important role. If people can see what you need, they like to buy these items for you. And it's a lot easier to get this type of thing through peer-to-peer fundraising than it is just to raise general funds in the end of the day. So it is a big involvement. There are a lot of different ideas, pub crawls. We've also tried having different things at restaurants. We try to get a restaurant involved and people contributing to go to an eat out or something like this and raising funds in this type of manner. We've also held special cooking classes, as we are a vegan organization. We try and promote this, and we've had vegan cooking classes, and people contribute a certain amount of money to participate, and this also comes away. So we normally got a vegan chef that's been here before that goes out and does this type of thing for us. But of course, also helping your volunteers in this regard, promoting their campaign, showing that you're involved, showing that you're interested, keeps them going, keep on pushing them, promote them all the time on your social media. I think this is very, very important, just so that they can see that you've really got an interest in the whole thing in the end of the day. And from the Monkey Foundation side, that's basically a lot of the stuff that we do to get our sort of peer-to-peer fundraising involved with our volunteers. Hope that wasn't too fast.
Thank you, Dave. That was fine. And we can come back and ask a few questions at the end, unless anyone has a question now.
And let me go ahead, Jackie. I just need to reshare the slide presentation. Let me pull this
Okay.
back up. There you go.
Thank you. So I believe Sarah is going to be presenting some information about the Monkey Sanctuary, about futures.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Hansen, and I am Supporter Relations Manager at Wild Futures, the Monkey Sanctuary. So we are a primate welfare and conservation charity. We were founded in 1964 in response to the growing exotic pet trade, and we are fortunate enough to be located in a beautiful part of the United Kingdom in Cornwall. So we have over 50 years of experience of caring for monkeys in captivity. We actually started keeping, after our founder, Len Williams, actually inherited a woolly monkey as a pet and realised that they should not be kept as pets, and so started the beginning of our journey, which was the Woolly Monkey Sanctuary. And then we have been actively rescuing monkeys since 2000 as well. So we are home to 39 monkeys of 4 different species. We have woolly monkeys, Barbary macaques, capuchins, and marmosets. And as I've mentioned, these guys have all been rescued, and it's mainly from the UK primate pet trade, which we do campaign heavily against. So I was invited today, thank you very much, to talk a little bit about how we engage our supporters to partake in fundraising for us. And one of the main things that we do as a charity, and we are a small charity and we have a very small team. So with that in mind, we can't always be hugely successful at every aspect of fundraising that we try and do. So we're a very small team. So therefore, we have to make sure that we have a very good basis to start with. And for us, that is our kind of initial engagement with our supporters. And we do that by basically telling the stories of the monkeys that we are rescuing. And we invite our supporters to come along with us on the journey of their rehabilitation, let them know about their pasts and what they do with their sort of forever home with us at the sanctuary. So with that storytelling, we're also very much building relationships with our supporters. And we do that by all kinds of different forms of communication via our social media pages. We have a newsletter. We send out sort of monthly monkey news, e-news type things. And we have resources for people to use as well. And with that in mind, we just try and really build that basis of people's interest, their understanding of the work that we do. And then with that in mind, we are then sort of hoping that then they can engage a bit further with us and then potentially want to increase their fundraising. So potentially not just being kind of a one-to-one supporter where it's just them as individuals supporting us, but the idea that then they want to talk to us about, talk to their friends and family about why they support Wild Futures and want to do more with it. So when people approach us, be it our volunteers on site that we have or our supporters further afield, we very much explain to them the importance of fundraising and how much it means to us and what we can do with the funds that they raise. We can also, it's very important as well to make it as easy for ourselves as it is for the supporter that wants to do the fundraising as well. And again, as I mentioned previously, when you are a small charity or a small sanctuary, when you don't have a lot of time, it's really, really important, I believe, to invest time in setting up easily accessible resources for people to grab if they want to do a bit of fundraising for us. And also communication with that supporter to make sure that their goals aren't basically make sure that their goals of fundraising are achievable for both themselves as individuals, but also for us as a charity as well, because it's really, really important that we support them in their fundraising journey. So we have to keep in mind of what our capacity is as well. And the way that we do that is we have created a fundraising pack that is accessible via our website. We also put together very short and simple presentations that, so if somebody wants to, for example, a student at university wants to give a talk about the work that we do to their peers and then potentially follow it up with a bake sale or something, we've already created the resource for them that they can use and they can go to give that presentation and talk to their peers about the work that we do. And also it's really, really important to build their confidence and encourage them every step of the way. And again, I'd say probably the most important thing for us that we have found that also helps build the relationships further and also that loyalty between the supporter and us is just continually thank them for the work that they're doing, reiterating the importance of what they're doing as well, because without them, we wouldn't be sort of, in the position that we're in. our supporters, and especially this year with everything going on, our supporters have really helped us and seen us through probably one of the hardest times that many of us have ever been in. So again, just really reiterating that point of appreciation and just letting them know their worth, basically, that they're absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that was a very sort of whistle-stop tour of sort of the things we do, but yeah, building that relationship with your supporters is really, really key. And then when you have that basis of support, you can then develop into various different points of fundraising, such as peer-to-peer or community fundraising. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. We have had a few questions come in, but we do have one more presentation before we go to the questions. So now we're going to hear from Todd Montgomery at the Elephant Sanctuary, and also Lori Duvall Jackson, one of the volunteer Ellie ambassadors for the Elephant Sanctuary.
Hi, everyone, and it's such a pleasure to be here. And a lot of what I'm about to share really fits in nicely with what Sarah and Dave have already said. I do want to give you a little bit of information to begin with about the Elephant Sanctuary. Of course, we care for elephants. We care for a very special group of 11 elephants here at our facility in Tennessee, in the United States. We have about 2,700 acres set aside as habitats for these animals, and our job is to provide home, herd, rest, refuge, and individualized care for life, which can be a very long time. We have an elephant here who turned 72 this year. So when we talk about giving them a lifetime of care, that can be a very, very long commitment, as some of you certainly know. And we can move to I'll move to the next slide. How about that? Our mission, again, is twofold. One, to provide captive elephants with an individualized care plan for the rest of their life in a more natural habitat, and also to educate the public of the complex needs of elephants, not only in captivity, but also the crisis facing elephants in the wild. And this is our 25th year. We were founded in 1995. Again, we're located in the state of Tennessee, about 85 miles southwest of Nashville, which is the capital city of Tennessee. And we are accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. I'm very happy to be a part of that wonderful organization and their work. And we are not open to the public. The elephant habitats are not open to the public. We do have an associated museum facility that is in the town where we are located, but that is separate than the actual site where the elephants live. And that museum is where I am now, where we have drop-in visitors, school groups, lots of web-based learning programs, and that is where we're spending a lot of our time now, as are all of you, I know. But we're here today to talk about our peer-to-peer fundraising and the way that we are able to energize and activate volunteers to be fundraisers or awareness raisers. And I would like to say that the genesis or the inspiration for our elephant ambassador, or Ellie ambassador, if you guys didn't put that together already, the genesis for our Ellie ambassador program really came from outside, not from within. When I took over in this position, I was contacted by one individual, a supporter of the Elephant Sanctuary, a woman named Lisa, who lived in Massachusetts. And she contacted me and she said, hey, I took it upon myself to create these presentations about the Elephant Sanctuary. And I have these talking points, and I give chats, or I give presentations usually every week to a classroom or a senior citizens center or a civic club or something like that. And she's telling me all this on the phone, and she says, is that okay? And I said, not only is it okay, but I need you to help me figure out how to make more of you. And that really became the Ellie Ambassador program. We realized we're very fortunate to have all of these very energetic supporters all around the country and the world who want to do something to help with our mission, to help these elephants. And our idea was to bring those people in, to make them part of our part of our team, although certainly in some case much more casually or unofficially, and allow them some ownership of what the Elephant Sanctuary is and does. So from the very beginning, our goal was to recruit community-based volunteers, not to serve primarily as fundraisers necessarily, not just to raise money or resources. Well, I take that back. We did want them to raise resources, but not money. We wanted them to raise support. We wanted them to raise awareness. We found out early on it seemed to be a much more sustainable model and a much more effective one, honestly, to have our LE ambassadors raise or collect email addresses, contacts that we could then plug into our overall communication platform, as opposed to giving them a fundraising mandate. Now, a lot of our LE ambassadors are very good fundraisers, and we're very, very thankful for that. But also, our main push for them is their this is an overused term, so forgive me, but we like to think of them as friend raisers. They're making connections for us, and then we're fitting them into the Sanctuary's overall communications and fundraising pipeline. I feel like I've probably talked way too much. A little bit about how the program actually works. We host a monthly online orientation for new LE ambassadors, people who are interested in volunteering on our behalf. So we speak to them on the first Wednesday of each month. We share with them basic information about the Sanctuary, about the resources available, about the literature that they can have, about the web-based or the electronic resources that they can share. Really, we are giving everybody, we want all of our LE ambassadors to have the same baseline, the same starting point of knowledge, so that we maintain a consistency of message. And then we allow our volunteers to seek out opportunities on their own, to find the appropriate audience in their respective communities, because obviously if we have someone in Boston, Massachusetts, or Buffalo, New York, or San Diego, California, that volunteer living in that community is going to be much more plugged in, much more aware of the opportunities there than I would be here in our little town in Tennessee. So it's much more of a partnership or collaboration. We email regularly with our LE ambassadors. We have about 120 active LE ambassadors right now. Their level of involvement varies wildly. It's really up to them and their comfort level. We communicate not only via emails, we have a closed group on Facebook. A lot of our LE ambassadors are working together on different things, sharing ideas, and we try to keep track of the hours and the number of people that they've reached here using our donor tracking software. At this point, I would like to introduce one of our LE ambassadors, one of the people that I really started working with very early on in this journey, and that is Lori Duvall Jackson. Lori is one of our volunteers, one of our LE ambassadors based in the Buffalo, New York area, and I thought it would be helpful. We thought it would be helpful for her to share her side of the story and how she became involved, using from a volunteer standpoint. So, Lori, with that, I'll let you take over.
Hi.
Hi, Lori.
Let's see.
We can hear you, Lori.
Okay.
perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay. There I am. So, hi, I'm Lori. Thanks for inviting me to speak to you today. I'll talk about my experiences in my work as a volunteer for the Elephant Sanctuary, some of the activities I've become involved in. I joined the program in 2016 after inquiring about it through their website. I received an email response from Todd Montgomery, who, after some initial communications, invited me to attend one of the monthly online orientations that he mentioned, which I did, and shortly thereafter made the decision to become an LE ambassador. And here I would like to say that my initial communications with Todd played a large part in my decision to participate in the volunteer program. He was very knowledgeable and welcoming and enthusiastic, and that did play a large role in my decision. Had I received kind of a cold stock, thank you for your interest in our program, I'm not sure that any of this would have happened. So I think it's important that the person who will be the first point of contact for prospective volunteers be able to demonstrate those qualities, because it really helps to draw people in. So after I joined the program, as Todd mentioned, we are self-starters. We're free to design our own activities. And I tend to work more in the area of raising public awareness for the sanctuary. Now, back in 2016, our program was not nearly as large as it is now, and there were fewer resources and less people to consult. So I really was kind of unsure as to how to get started. So I decided to think outside the box, which became something of a habit. And my first endeavor for the sanctuary was attendance at a conservation film festival in New York City. And that went fairly well. I staffed a table the day of the elephant movies, and I handed out sanctuary material and spoke with people. But it was that evening that was a real eye-opener. My husband and I were invited to the awards ceremony for the film festival, and that included all the film festival participants. So when we arrived at the gala, we realized that there was a room full of people from organizations all over the world that we could network with. And at the time, the sanctuary's profile was not nearly what it is now. So I could introduce myself to any number of people and say, hi, I'm Lori, I'm with the Elephant Sanctuary. And people would respond, oh, where's that? I never heard of you. And I was then able to inform them about us and our organization and the things that we do. So I found that to be very helpful and learned early on that networking is an important part of volunteering. Other activities that I've been involved in, my niece, who is a teacher at a local high school, was able to facilitate an event for me where I went to the high school and did some presentations. So I would encourage any volunteers to take advantage of family or friends who can get a foot in the door for them. The presentations were fairly successful, to the extent I was invited back the following year, and the year after that, and the year after that. In addition to which, the high school always sent a nice donation to the sanctuary afterwards. So even though it's not a traditional fundraising, I do try and send a speaker fee or have something in the way of financial remuneration sent to the sanctuary. In addition, I learned that establishing a presence at a venue or an event is a very good thing to do, because it lessens the need to seek out your own opportunities. People will begin to seek you out. For example, the New York State Power Authority hosts a wildlife festival every year. It's a 2-day affair, free, open to the public. Dozens of organizations come, set up shop, and over the course of 2 days, we will engage with 300 or 400 people. We put the donation jar out. I have a sign-up sheet for a book raffle where I get people's emails. And as Todd mentioned, those are used for points of future contact. So I always make sure to do that. And after the first year, I received invitations from the organizers every year after. Will you be there? Do you need a table? And you respond yes. And then you become the beneficiary of the free publicity at events such as that. Now, in addition to staffing tables, I also do a fair amount of public speaking. There are any number of organizations who are happy to host a speaker who can talk about a subject that they find different and interesting. And the opportunities to do so are actually quite available, because there are senior citizens groups, there's scouting organizations, libraries, any number of groups that are happy to host you. Usually they will ask about a speaker's fee, and I ask that that be sent to the sanctuary in lieu of any payment to me. And so I make sure to do that. And this is a great way of raising public awareness, because I do now actually have something of a speaking circuit that I do every year, Senior Citizen Center one day and Scouting Group the following week, etc. So as far as actual fundraising, I have done a couple events that were strictly geared towards fundraising. The first one was not very successful. Had it not been for friends and family, it probably wouldn't have been successful at all. But you live and you learn. And the second fundraiser that I held was quite the opposite. It was very successful. It was held this past summer. I called it a backyard benefit. It was held in our backyard by invitation only. And in the course of one evening, we were able to raise several $100s for the sanctuary. Now I had to spend some of my own money to buy prizes and food and giveaways, but I just look at that as another donation to the sanctuary and kind of the cost of doing business. So the backyard benefit is something that I'm sure I will be doing again next year. It was a lot of fun. It was very easy, and it was a way of thinking outside the box to raise funds for the sanctuary. Now, my most successful event in terms of publicity is from the slide that Todd had shown with my students from the University of Buffalo, where I work. College campuses provide lots of opportunities to work for your group. They hold all sorts of events, and I have set up tables at sustainability fairs, at International Student Week, and the picture that Todd showed where my students are standing around an elephant was actually the most successful in terms of generating publicity. It took place on World Elephant Day. We have a buffalo statue on campus that people are allowed to paint and decorate. And I came up with the idea of changing the buffalo to an elephant with the assistance of my niece. And we were able to do that, as you see. And my students tweeted out pictures to their friends all over the world. I was interviewed by a couple different publications a few weeks afterwards. Different departments on campus wrote up the event and sent out pictures. So this generated all sorts of publicity that was free and did a great deal towards reaching an international audience. So those are some of the things that I have done as a volunteer. One last thing that I would like to mention is my work with the sanctuary led me to another volunteer group, and that was a group in South Africa called Wildlife Act. Part of the sanctuary's mission is to address the problems of the wild elephant population. And in 2016, those were substantial problems. It was the height of the poaching crisis, which I knew nothing about. And after learning that elephants were being slaughtered wholesale for their ivory, that really drew me in to the point where I felt like I had to do something participatory to really help. That resulted in my affiliation with the group called Wildlife Act in South Africa. And for the past 3 years, I have traveled to a camp location in Zululand, South Africa, and performed volunteer field work. And those have been very rewarding experiences. I've helped trap and relocate a wild dog pack. I've monitored elephant populations. I've helped recollar cheetahs. So those were the experiences of a lifetime, in addition to being boots on the ground work that was very helpful. As Wildlife Act contracts with the South African government to perform this work. So that's pretty much a summation of the types of activities that I perform on behalf of the sanctuary. And as the years have gone on, the sanctuary's affiliations have also grown more international. So I like to think that we've grown together, and I look forward to doing additional work for the sanctuary, attending conferences, networking, doing public speaking, staffing tables, holding fundraisers, whatever it is that I'm able to do to raise public awareness and sometimes as a byproduct funding for the sanctuary.
So Lori, of course, said everything probably much better than I can from a volunteer perspective. I do want to add that we did have a LA Ambassador workshop here at our Elephant Discovery Center last August now, where we had a number of our active LA Ambassadors come for continued training, education, some team building, volunteer activities. It was a really, really great I think, weekend of fellowship and learning. I do want to add as well that the Elephant Sanctuary does have a peer-to-peer fundraising function as part of our website. To be really, really honest, it works very well, but it hasn't been a runaway success. I think the lesson that we've learned there is you can have all these really, really great tools, but you have to put at least as much thought and time into marketing those opportunities as to how they actually work and function. So that is something that we're working on now. We have a really wonderful function, but we're still researching the best way to encourage people to take advantage of it, as opposed to various third-party fundraisers, which you all know their names as well as I do. So thank you guys so much. I think that's probably enough of us for now, but we look forward to handling your questions.
Thank you so much, Todd and Lori. And Lori, I think we'd like to clone you and send you to a few other sanctuaries to help them build some volunteer programs. That's just fantastic. We have a few questions, Robin. I think I'm going to take this unless there's anything you wanted to say first.
Nope. The only thing I wanted to mention is if anybody does have questions, feel free to type those into the chat, and Jackie will be reading those off to the presenters.
Thanks, Robin. So we had a couple of questions about what information are provided to your fundraisers, and particularly a point that Sarah had raised about how Wild Futures works with volunteer fundraisers. Can you talk a little bit more about the fundraising pack that you provide, the presentations and other materials? Like, how would a group starting a program put together materials?
Yeah, so our fundraising pack is a sort of a simple resource that's put together that kind of includes varying different ideas of how people can fundraise, sort of looking a bit more at community fundraising. It can be anything from ideas of personal challenges that people can do, from climbing, I don't know, Mount Snowdon in Wales. Cool. Bad geography there. Or doing the Three Peaks Challenge on the moors and things like that, to doing sponsored events, varying from sponsored silences with primary schools, all kinds of different things, to hosting dinner parties, kind of doing where you sort of organise with friends. I mean, can't do it at the moment, unfortunately. But organise with friends dinner parties that you also all contribute, and it gives the supporter that's doing that fundraising the opportunity to discuss at the dinner party why they're fundraising for us, why they're raising awareness about the Monkey Sanctuary and the work that we do. So yeah, the fundraising pack just tries to sort of combine as many different ideas to give people inspiration, and then they can talk to us in a bit more detail about certain things that may or may not work. So yeah, hopefully that has answered your question.
Thanks, Sarah. And I wanted to turn it over and ask the same question to Dave and to Todd for the kinds of peer-to-peer activities that you engage your volunteers in. Do you put together any kind of information sheets, information packs, talking points list, anything to help guide them?
Sure, I can answer that. So in addition to what I mentioned before, where we do a live training webinar once a month at a regularly scheduled time, we also use different file sharing accounts. Dropbox is a big one that we use a lot to share a list of talking points, frequently asked questions about the Elephant Sanctuary. We have a collection of photographs from the sanctuary that are copyrighted that we then give to our LA ambassadors that they can use and reprint. We also have a series of videos that we share in the same way. So we try to create an electronic resources package that is honestly, and Lori can probably attest, way more information than anyone would need, but we want them to have plenty from which they can choose. Some people are much more dependent on the visual media. Some people are much more storytellers. Some people prefer just to have lots of our brochures on hand, which we're happy to send, that they can then distribute. I always use an example. I mentioned San Diego earlier, and that's intentional. We have a mother-daughter team of LE ambassadors there, and they have taken it upon themselves to make sure that every public library in San Diego County has copies of our newsletter and our literature, which is something that we provide. So a combination of hard materials and electronic materials. Honestly, looking ahead, we're probably going to do a lot more electronic resources than physical hard resources. But yeah, we try to come up with whatever may be needed, and we depend on the feedback from our volunteers to know what that is or should be.
Thanks, Todd. And I'll just turn it over to Dave if there's anything else you want to add. If you have volunteers who want to engage in something, how do you go about, especially if they're not on site, how would you go about providing them with some resources that they can use to form a little event?
What we've done is in the UK and in Europe, we've actually got a fundraising manager that's sort of someone that's been volunteering for a couple of years in the foundation that actually knows what's going on. And sort of they help with resources, and they'll also help people getting started if they come up with new ideas. But a lot of things come from the volunteers side themselves. So it's not something that we're sending out and telling them to do. We're finding out that it's, if they come up with something fresh, sometimes they don't. I mean, it will be like the normal things, a birthday bash or something on Facebook. It's their birthday, they want to raise things normally. But, sometimes they do come up with something new. We just got to be careful of what, as I say, how they do these things, that it falls within our principles, because we are very careful. We wouldn't like somebody to go and do like a barbecue or something like this to raise funds for us, because we feel it defeats our purpose. So then we'll try and get them to get vegan products sponsored or something like this to promote the correct way of doing something. So it's just to ensure that they follow certain guidelines and it's within the principles of the foundation itself. But a lot of the times ideas come from them, or we put them in contact with our international fundraiser that they can collaborate with, and maybe get pamphlets and things like this that they could hand out at certain events and things like this that they hold.
Thank you, Dave. Our next question, it was actually came in after Dave's presentation, but I'll ask each of you. We hear that there are resources that have to go into developing relationships with your supporters to do peer-to-peer fundraising. Were there any strategies, any peer-to-peer strategies that you felt were more time-consuming than were fruitful, or maybe were less successful? Anyone want to get started on that?
Yeah, look, that's always a difficult thing to say. I mean, every one of them takes a little bit of your time initially, and resources to get them started, and it also depends on the person themselves. Some people just need, they come up with the idea, but they don't have the sort of, let's say, gumption to get something going, and that'll take a lot more from you to actually get the ball rolling. But generally, I've found a lot of people have got the enthusiasm, and there's nothing that really wouldn't work as long as they're prepared to go out and do stuff. So I think one's also got to be a little bit careful that you don't get too involved, otherwise it defeats the purpose. You encourage them and encourage their ideas, and try and get them to promote it as much as they can.
Thank you, Dave. We have a couple of questions that have come in on the chat that are kind of open to everyone, and I think we've touched on this a little. But if anyone wants to respond to how have your fundraisers or ambassadors changed their work during COVID? Todd, I know that you mentioned that probably you're going to be doing a lot more online digital than in the past. So anything else you'd like to add to answer that question?
Sure. I think the easiest answer to that question is just to say yes. Things are changing and will continue to for a long time. And we are, just like all of you, living and adjusting and learning in a rapidly changing world. I know that by and large, again, speaking of what we're dealing with here in the United States, so much of our group presentation, our chances for people to be together, that just hasn't been a reality for the past several months. And so, to Lori's example that she gave earlier, hosting smaller outdoor gatherings, we have many more of our volunteers who are doing a lot more work online. We're actually looking at, I haven't even told Lori this, but we're looking at coming up with some sort of a sanctuary share program where we can encourage people to share content via their social media profiles and then incentivize that. So yes, things are changing, and I suspect that they probably will for quite some time now. The positive effect of that, if I may, is that because this isn't something that just affects some of us, it's something that affects all of us. And what we found is that doing things like this, having web-based programming, whereas beforehand it wasn't as much in the global collective conscious as it is now. So I think our audience on average are more willing to be receptive to web-based or electronic programming because that's become a necessity, and that does open up, or it makes a much larger audience more accessible to us. So I think the takeaway is that we have to be willing to learn, we have to be willing to adapt, and we have to roll with the punches a little bit. And Lori, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, the event that I held this past summer that I've already mentioned, the Backyard Benefit, kind of came about because of the pandemic, in trying to find something to replace my normal activities. But if you're fortunate enough to live in a warm weather climate, which I do not, being in Buffalo, I think there would be a lot more opportunity to hold events so long as you adhere to the protocols that are in place in your locality. I'm fortunate to have a large enough property where, we had to put a great deal of thought into how to hold this event and still adhere to the protocols. But we were able to do that. We provided sanitizer. We distanced out some of the activities that took place. We asked people to bring their own folding chairs and their own coolers, so that nobody had to touch anybody else's materials. So you do have to put that kind of thought into an event for it to be successful, but it is possible, and it's something that I think is going to happen more often until things change back.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Lori. We have a few other questions.
It's Rachel here. I was just wondering if I can say
Oh, please.
Yeah,
Sure,
hi.
Rachel.
So it's Rachel from Wild Futures. I just a comment on sort of the effect of COVID, and also to sort of show the value of having somebody like Sarah on our team, because we have been unable to hold any sort of events. The regulations in the UK, or at least in England, means that there's no kind of gatherings allowed at all. And it's really shown the value of nurturing and caring for our individual supporters. So because they are also going through a rough time, and that feeling of we're all in it together, and keeping in touch with people and responding to their questions through the social media, those are things show their value at times like this. And we have benefited to the extent that when people have been locked down and unable to go out and go to the shops, then they are looking online for other things to do, and purchase. And our adoption scheme has benefited from that, and that's another way of reaching out to supporters and potentially building relationships with them as well.
Thank you, Rachel, for adding that. It is so important to remember that your supporters are going through a tough time, just as all of the sanctuaries are. That's a great point. That kind of leads to a follow-up question I was going to ask, which is, how do you go about recognizing the achievements of your volunteer fundraisers or ambassadors, such as in newsletter articles on social media? And do you find that this promotion or acknowledgement of your fundraisers will lead to other supporters asking how they can get involved? I don't know who would like to take that question. Perhaps Dave, do we want to start?
Yes, I think it does. With all of these kind of things, encouraging them or putting it into your newsletter. So sometimes we'll take whatever the volunteers have done or achieved and put it into that month's newsletter and things. And of course, social media is a very big thing with us, especially using Facebook and stuff like that. And then sort of promoting those kind of events on Facebook. And I think it does encourage certain people. I won't say we get a big calling from that. And that's why our biggest thing was trying to get people while they at the foundation, which has become a little bit of an impossibility at the moment, but while they're at the foundation to try and get them involved. And we found that's worked better because they seem to have changed their life completely while they're here. And then when they go home, they go back into this old way of what they used to be, and sort of you get forgotten by the by. So it's very few volunteers that you can hang on to that are really dedicated to doing things. So yes, it's a difficult thing, but I do think promoting it in your social media and stuff like this is an important aspect.
Thank you. Either Todd or Sarah or Rachel want to add?
I would just add, Sarah, go ahead.
Sorry. So we do 2 printed newsletters a year, and we've actually just done one, and it was very important for us, especially this year, because we have been asking our supporters through various different fundraising streams for help continually, especially since March, to get us through this time. So it was very important for us to kind of focus our newsletters on sort of giving back. So just very much talking about stories of the monkeys at the sanctuary, how we're getting on, etc. But we also did a double-page spread of just a big thank you, and we pulled out a few examples of fundraising and raising awareness that our supporters have done. We had a 6-year-old that wanted to save his 20p's that he could send in to Pablo, the adopted monkey, his adopted monkey. Somebody that shaved their head for us as well. So it's just highlighting those things that supporters have done, and just really, really saying thank you to those individuals, but also just generally. And it kind of goes back to my point in the presentation that giving those thank yous are really, really important, because obviously, it makes them feel good about it as well, but it does highlight to other people that can sometimes be a bit overwhelmed by the idea of fundraising and asking people for money. That actually there are very simple ways, from little Dougie, 6-year-old Dougie who saved his 20p's, to Jane who shaved her head for us. So there can be really varying levels of fundraising and what you want to do. And I think that using that and showing those examples by saying thank you is a good way to show people that it can, like I say, can be really varying. And we do, not a lot of the time, but then it does give people ideas. We've had, off the back of somebody doing an online art auction for us this year, we've had another 2 people want to be involved, either running their own online art auction or creating something to contribute to somebody else's online art auction. So I do think that it is beneficial to kind of shout from the rooftops how incredible our supporters and volunteer fundraisers are. So yeah.
Thank you. Todd, you wanted to add to that?
I think it's all pretty much been said. The only thing that I would add, and we just did this yesterday on our social media, the more that you can highlight and spotlight the work of children and young people as your supporters, I think they have a much broader appeal, shall we say. So if you do have those younger people who are dedicated, who are volunteering, who are supporting, if you're able to hold up those stories, that seems to really, really, really get a lot of positive attention. So that would be another bit of advice, I suppose.
Thank you. We only have a few more minutes. If anyone has a last question, please put it in. I have one more here. Is someone speaking? Okay, maybe it was feedback. And our presenters have touched on this a little, but the question is, do you recruit specifically for peer-to-peer fundraising volunteers, or do you try to turn your regular volunteers into peer-to-peer fundraisers? And I know you've all spoken to this a bit, but do you have experiences of people coming to you who haven't previously been involved as volunteers or donors, and you know, kind of their first point of contact is they'd like to become an ambassador or peer-to-peer fundraiser? Maybe Todd, you want to just answer in terms of the LA Ambassador Program? Have you had people come to you who weren't previously engaged as a volunteer or donor?
Yeah, one of the first things that we heard were we heard from so many volunteers who said either they weren't comfortable, quote unquote, asking for money or handling money, which I completely understand. And so for us, just speaking for us, we have had more success recruiting supporters, and then from there asking them or them taking it upon themselves to do more peer-to-peer fundraising, to become fundraisers on our behalf. So speaking for me and what we do, we typically don't recruit fundraisers per se. Again, we are looking for advocates, people who are passionate about what we do, and people who are willing to share that passion and enthusiasm in various different forms. And then from that group, we do find people who seem to have a special skill or talent for fundraising. But I think for us, that seems to be a much more sustainable way to recruit volunteers and supporters. And then from that larger group to find the people who are comfortable actually asking on our behalf.
Thank you. Well, Dave, let me ask the question to you, because I know you said it's easier when you have a volunteer who's already on site. Not that that's possible right now, but what success has Vervet Monkey Foundation had with people becoming engaged to raise funds who previously weren't on site, who've not been to your sanctuary, have not been volunteers for you in the past?
Yeah, normally that situation is a little bit more difficult because the person doesn't really have much of the background of what the foundation is about. I must admit we don't have really many people under those circumstances, because unless you've come into contact with somebody who's previously been to the foundation or attended some kind of event that we've been using to promote ourselves internationally, you wouldn't really know much about us. So we do, it would normally come up from some event, from an event or something. We do try and attend a lot of the vegan events in the UK, and sometimes we do get people that are interested from that point of view. And then normally then we'll put them into contact with our fundraiser in that area, our fundraising manager, and they'll coordinate the whole fundraising aspect from that point of view to try and make sure things are going well, or they got the right resources or anything that they may need. We do try and get like pamphlets and and that type of thing printed in different countries so that we can hold it there, because it's very expensive to try to do it from South Africa and send it from our country everywhere else. Even when it comes down to peer-to-peer fundraising, for us it's very, very difficult because we're not recognized throughout the world internationally on these bigger platforms. So where you've got certain things like GoFundMe and all of this type of thing, we can't actually set ourselves up as a charity that people can then fundraise for that charity. Even under Facebook, I can't set up our foundation as a charity to actually be able to raise funds. So these things do have their big problems in their own way. because first of all, you have to try and trust the person that's collecting funds for you. Not that I've had anybody try to do us in all the years that I've been doing this, but in this age, you never really know what's going on, especially if large amounts of money are traveling between people. So that's one of the reasons for trying to have a fundraising manager in various countries, that they can help with that type of thing and make sure everything goes according to plan.
Thank you so much, Dave, for that answer. That was great. And I see we're at the top of the hour. So I just want to thank all of our presenters again for this great information they've shared and for answering so many questions for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Robin for any final remarks.
Thanks, Jackie. Again, I just want to echo what Jackie said. Thank you to all of the presenters. Thank you to everybody who attended today. As I mentioned, early next week, I will get everybody a link to the recording. So if you'd like to view this again or pass it along to anyone else to view, please feel free to do that. So again, thank you, everybody, and I hope you all have a great day and great weekend. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, no, that was great. Fred, I had a few technical issues, but Sarah's great at what she does. So she did all the talking that was needed. And thanks to everybody else.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.